Often you're dealing with excavated soils that aren't particularly good to grow plants in. So you can see from this cutting here, there's a relatively thin A horizon, what they call an A horizon, which is this topsoil horizon. It's not too bad, it's a skinny layer. Sitting directly beneath that, you'll see what the subsoil is like, which is clay. So I can make a clay ball out of that material. So you can imagine, not too many things are going to want to grow in that. You might not have that situation though, you might have the opposite, which is sand. Both of those different situations are managed in a similar way in terms of getting a soil profile that you can grow a plant in. So in the case of the clay, keep in mind a normal soil profile is made up of compost or organic matter. It's got a sort of a sandy component, it might have a bit of a clay component and a bit of a silt. So that's the basics of what makes up soil profiles. Those that have a lot of clay are obviously like a clay ball, some have no clay and you've got sand, so they're all a bit different. For a clay soil, if you want to condition it, and this pile here is mainly clay, although you will see it is loose. So there's also some busted sandstone in there as well. So look, that's actually workable. It has the basics of a soil profile. It's not pretty, but it has the basics of it. What it lacks is organic matter, is compost. So one of the things you would do for a soil profile like that is add a product called Green Life Mulch and Compost. 100% compost. It's a soil conditioner. And look, this is obviously messy, but you put a layer over the top and you dig it in and you're trying to end up with a blend of your existing soil, the clay, the sand and some compost. Now you've got to work it in and it takes a bit of while to get it to grow well, but that's the basics of a long-term soil when you're starting with something that is workable. When you're starting with straight clay, that's quite difficult. So a product you can use is called Organic Clay Breaker, which is a blend of compost, sands and some gypsum. Now what the gypsum does is what they call flocculate the soil, which means it helps break the soil up into smaller pieces, which opens the porosity up, lets the water drain through. So that's what the gypsum does for you. That can be worked into a clay soil. Now again, it takes quite a while for that to work, but over time you will eventually get to something that is more like a natural soil. If you have sand, really you're looking for compost. You're looking for organic matter, something to hold the water and hold the nutrients. You've got a couple of options there. One is the Green Life, particularly if you're growing native plants. So that's a low phosphorus product that is good for native plants that don't like too much phosphorus, like grevilleas, proteas, waratahs, things like that. If you want to grow more exotic plants and you're on soil, then you'll add a product called Botany Humus. It's a blend of different compost. It's much richer than the Green Life. It's a rich compost. So you do exactly the same thing. You blend Botany Humus into the soil. Whatever blend, whatever product you end up using for whatever situation you do, you don't want more than 50% by volume of compost in the finished blend. So that's how you start. You can always build it up and make it richer over time, but you don't want to make it too composty, particularly when you're dealing with a clay soil, because it'll hold too much water and the plants will drown. So some of these things are a process that needs time. So you might have to do this a couple of times before you get the soil profile closer to something that can grow in. But that's the basics of it. You have either sand or clay. You might use Organic Clay Breaker to break up the clay. You might use Green Life Mulch and Compost to add to sand for natives, or you'll use Botany Humus, which is a much richer compost for plants that like a lot more nutrition.